Hello, my friend. It's Ellen, and I am going to do my best to get through everything you need to know, give you everything you need to know about LinkedIn newsletters in 2025. And if you've seen earlier videos from us on this subject, there's going to be just a couple changes because there's some new cool stuff that LinkedIn and AI is allowing us to do. So let's just start first with the why. Remember Simon Sinek? He wanted us to start with why. Why are newsletters, LinkedIn newsletters, such a good idea, especially if you're hearing this for the first time and you're inwardly sighing deeply with the thought of doing yet another newsletter? Here's what's so cool about them. In regular content, posts, polls, whatever you're doing, videos, doesn't matter. Your posts just go up in someone's feed, right? And that's the only place they can be seen. When you put out a newsletter, people are going to subscribe to it. And that way, they're not only going to go by in their feed, they're going to get a notification in their notifications. Hey, so and so released a new issue of their newsletter. And they're also going to get an email in their work email, the email connected with LinkedIn, to let them know that a new issue of your newsletter has come out. So if we're doing a really good job with the newsletter and the name of the newsletter and making this worth reading, which are huge, this is a big advantage over regular posts on LinkedIn. So people often ask, like, how often do I do this newsletter? I think once a week is great. I also think once every 2 weeks is a perfectly fine way to start. And if you're a little bit nervous about this, start with once a month, but just get going because once you do it, you're going to be like, oh, wow, this is actually not harder than doing a post on LinkedIn. And I'm getting a lot more bang for my buck. Okay. So, what's the most important thing? You've decided, okay, Ellen, I'm convinced I'm going to go for that why that you said. What's the most important thing to think about next? Well, so when you publish your first issue of your first newsletter, everybody that you're connected to or that follows you is going to get a notification in their LinkedIn inviting them to subscribe to your newsletter. As soon as you add more followers or connections, the next time your newsletter comes out, they're going to get asked to subscribe to your newsletter. So, this subscription, this invitation to subscribe is the first thing people are going to see. And I just want to show you this because when you see this visually, it really demonstrates why probably the most important thing to first think about is what is the name of your newsletter, because that's all people are going to know. So let me just show you. So if I go to my network, and then I go over here, so I've got 126 invitations. I know, I know. And I go to show all, and now I go to newsletters up here. Okay, so these are just the newsletters I've been invited to accept. So all I'm going to see is the person's name, whether the newsletter is weekly or monthly or whatever that person's saying it is, right? And then I'm going to see the name of the newsletter. So again, if I know the person, like I know Allie Beckman, well, then I'm definitely going to accept. If otherwise, I'm not going to know what the name of other than the person's name, I'm not going to understand what's going on here other than the name of the newsletter itself, right? So it's just important to consider this is how people are first getting it. So I always tell people, hey, it's awesome to do a newsletter, and please do wait until you know what you want a banging title for your newsletter, just because it's going to be a pain in the butt to change this name later, and it's a thing. So you just don't want to have to deal with it. Anyway, so that's what that part looks like. Okay. Now, what should the newsletter itself look like? And this is where we get to some kind of exciting parts of what's going on with AI and LinkedIn and all this fun stuff. So, I absolutely love this aspect because doing newsletter, like doing any kind of thumbnails was a problem for me. And now LinkedIn AI just does it for you, which is amazing. Oh, by the way, for anybody who doesn't know, Once people are subscribing to this newsletter through LinkedIn, all you're going to have to do is write the newsletter and publish it. LinkedIn is going to handle the distribution for you. So that's a pretty cool thing. And you don't have to really do anything to set that up. Okay, so what should the newsletter itself look like? Now, as with all things, there's a variety of opinions. Uh, be sure to check around because mine is just one. And as always, stay away from people in general who are like, it's my way or the highway. There's no other way to do it. It's like, but is there? Let's think about this. Okay, so basically, what I love is you can get these with the new LinkedIn AI. These are newsletters. They're in my featured section, which is where I love featured sections, just a great place to keep things you want to kind of show off, show people your personality, show people what you're up to, give the best value you possibly can, blow people's minds, all the things, right? So I what I'm always thinking about for my visual of my newsletter, these are just newsletter posts that I'm showing you. I always think about faces because we know on YouTube that people are more likely to open things with faces. So I figure there's got to be some stuff going on for LinkedIn as well. So basically, you can use the newsletter program to figure out, you tell it what you want in this spot, right? For your newsletter. So I recommend a thumbnail with a face, with an expression. And again, I'm always thinking about how's this stuff going to show up here, right? Because this featured section is really like it's your shop window. It's your Nordstrom shop window. People are deciding whether or not they're going to come on in, right? So, a couple other things about what the newsletter can actually look like. The newsletter can be short, it can be long. I don't care if your newsletter is 100 words, 200 words, 500 words, 1,000 words. I would say the length of the newsletter. People always want to know like how many words exactly. Well, on the one hand, shorter does better. But on the other hand, it's really a question of how good of a writer you are or how good of a writer you and AI are. How entertaining are you? Because that's going to matter a lot more. And people always want to sort of come back to these very kind of objective things. Oh, it's, exactly 350 words. Well, sure, it can be useful to know stuff like that. But rather than worrying about that too much, I really want you to worry about if you want to be on the brief side, be on the brief side, but write bangers. You've got AI now, so you can get some help. But anyway, let me just show you kind of what it looks like. So when you first publish any of your newsletter issues, you you're basically you write the newsletter. I'm going to show you that in just a second, and then you publish it as a post. So this is a post about an issue of my newsletter. And just so you can see, again, as you're doing the post, you want to think about, kind of attracting people to this. So I always think about kind of this curiosity gap as to draw people in. So here's my post. Here's exactly what happens when you refuse to claim your spot as a specialist. This one factor may make you think twice. Okay, so then we've got faces, we've got a headline, and here in my post, I have just a few hashtags. Again, don't go crazy with hashtags. 3 to 7 hashtags, it's fine. It's plenty. You don't need all the hashtags. So this is the big thing. When people actually see the newsletter, the big thing about how it looks is you really want to rethink paragraph structure if you were educated old school like I am. So paragraphs are now basically a sentence long. That's the idea. Because remember, I'm showing you this on my computer, but remember what this would look like on a phone, right? So there's lots of space in between. Pretty much each paragraph is 1 to 2 sentences. I'm using the headers, which are something you get to use in newsletter to kind of break up this text. So just remember that pretty much anybody, and then I'm finishing with, some things you can do, right? Now, my newsletters are long. I'm a professional writer. I can usually get away with that stuff, but yours don't have to be. But what they do have to be is like visually easy to read. That is huge. So, to get started on a newsletter, all you're going to do when you're ready is you're going to go to, hey, that's awesome. Now I can't wait to read. I can't wait to read this post from Rusty Gaylord, by the way, who's a friend and a former client. I love it. What's more relatable than toilet paper? Not too much. Okay, so what you want to do to go to write your first newsletter, go to start a post here, just where you'd start any post. You come down here to write article. Now, I've already set up my newsletter. And therefore, that's my newsletter, which is called LinkedIn for the Top 1%, is already up here. But it's also telling me I could publish this as an individual article, which just means like a blog post, or as my newsletter. And it's automatically set up for my newsletter because that's what I always choose. Because again, I want those bonuses of subscriptions and notifications and emails and all that fun stuff. So this, we can do a separate video on this, but this is the video you use to create your AI imagery for your newsletter. Here's where you put your newsletter. And just as kind of a fun thing here, here's when I talk to you about those like bold headings and stuff like that. This is where you can do headings and subheadings. And of course, just regular bold when you want. Okay, I know that is a ton of information. And we're going to stop there for today, just to kind of get you warmed up. But I think the beautiful thing finally about the why of newsletters is I have had my newsletter for just a couple of years, maybe three, think about three. And I have people almost every month who reach out and say, I've been reading your newsletter for, months, years, whatever, and I'm finally ready to work with you. So there's that reason. And most of all, I think what I always think is the most important thing about any type of content, social media, newsletters, anything like that. I love Seth Godin's question, which is, will they miss you when you're gone? So whether you're doing newsletters, posts, anything like that, would people miss your content if your content disappeared? Like that's a sign that you're doing something right, that you're providing value, that it's entertaining, that it gives people a new way to think about things. Maybe you make them smile, maybe you make them think more deeply, whatever it is. So that is your introductory tutorial to newsletters. Let me know what questions you have.